On stage, they were untouchable, legends whose voices could pierce through the soul and make the world stop for a moment. But behind the lights, behind the applause, many of them were silently breaking. Not from age, but from invisible ghosts, pressure, depression, abuse, and forces so dark they were never meant to be named. One artist was found dead from an overdose, but witnesses swear he was beaten and dumped outside a hospital. A beloved singer was discovered lifeless in her hotel room, yet her final recordings vanished without a trace. And those are only the stories we know. What you're about to hear isn't just about 19 mysterious and suspicious deaths. It's about 19 silent souls, 19 cries for help that were never answered. These are the whispers showbiz tried to bury. The truth's fame was never meant to reveal. This video is not for the faint of heart, but if you dare to look into the shadows behind the spotlight, stay with us. And before you leave, let your voice speak for those who can no longer speak for themselves. Billy Stewart. Billy Stewart, the voice that drowned with the truth. The car drifted off the bridge, and with it, the truth sank beneath the river. Billy Stewart, the man with the powerful frame and that unmistakable staccato singing, was once hailed as a one-of-a-kind soul. Nobody sang like him, people would say. His voice could dance, cry, and thunder all at once. But behind that brilliance was a man burdened by suspicion. Not because he lacked talent, but because he dreamed too big. In 1970, Billy dared to announce a project that frightened the industry. A self-produced protest album inspired by the civil rights movement. He called it Thick Soul, a collection meant to tell the stories of the poor, the forgotten, the exploited black artists who gave everything to music but received nothing in return. The project never saw daylight. On January 17th, Billy and 3 bandmates boarded a bus to Columbia for rehearsal. They never made it. The bus plunged into the river. Police closed the case, blaming icy brakes. But one haunting detail was buried. That same morning, Billy had called his stage manager and said, "Someone wrecked my car last night. The front tire's making a strange noise." No report, no recording. Everything vanished with the current. Days after his funeral, his family came home to find the door of his record store kicked open. All of Billy's new song manuscripts, every lyric from Thick Soul gone. The label denied knowing anything about the project. But a studio technician later confessed he'd heard one demo. Billy's trembling voice sang, "If I don't sing it loud, will you still bury me silent?" That question still echoes through time. Who silenced Billy Stewart? And why has no one dared to ask? Billy didn't just die in an accident. He was erased for singing too much truth. And when his music drowned in that river, what rose to the surface was a silence heavy with regret. Jesse Belvin. Jesse Belvin, the silenced note. In the golden age of R&B, Jesse Belvin was more than a singer. He was a dream draped in velvet. They called him the lullaby prince of Black Hope. His voice could melt walls, soothe storms, and move even white audiences to tears in the segregated South. But behind that smooth tone was quiet rebellion. Jesse didn't just sing to entertain. He sang to challenge the lines America had drawn in hate. In 1960, he did the unthinkable, performing before a mixed audience in Little Rock, Arkansas, a city still bleeding from segregation. That night, his voice rose above fear and prejudice, and for a moment, music united what laws had divided. But the price of that unity was death. Hours after leaving the stage, Jesse, his wife Joanne, and their driver were found in a twisted wreck on a lonely Arkansas road. The car had burst into flames. Joanne died instantly. Jesse took his last breath before reaching the hospital. Police called it a mechanical failure, but the details never fit. A missing tire report, threatening letters warning. If you sing with the whites, you'll never sing again. Even stranger, Jesse's final recording, Let's Sit Together, a love ballad about equality, vanished. The master tape erased, its message silenced before the world could hear it. 20 years later, an investigator revisited the case and said, "If that was an accident, I've never seen one so well planned." Jesse Belvin's death wasn't just the end of a rising star. It was the murder of a movement, the chilling moment when a song for peace was drowned in blood. He sang for unity, and for that, they made sure he'd never sing again. King Curtis. King Curtis. The man whose saxophone could make the air itself weep. His music didn't just play, it bled with soul, passion, and pain. Every note of his horn carried the voice of a generation searching for hope in chaos. But offstage, Curtis was the opposite of his sound, calm, kind, and far from controversy. That's why his death still feels like a wound the world never healed. On August 13th, 1971, after finishing a recording session for a track titled Starlight Riot, a haunting song rumored to address police brutality, Curtis returned to his Upper West Side apartment. Standing at his door was a stranger who refused to move. Words turned sharp. Then, in one brutal instant, Curtis was stabbed twice in the chest. His blood trailed down the stone steps like a tragic melody cut short. The man, later identified as Juan Montanez, called it a neighborhood argument. But those who knew Curtis knew better. A week before, he had received 3 anonymous phone calls. Each one ended with the same chilling warning. If you release that song, we'll silence your saxophone forever. When friends later entered his apartment, they found an unsent letter on his desk. In it, Curtis had written, "I know I'm making music they don't want to hear, but if I stay quiet, who will play for the children growing up in the dark?" After his death, Starlight Riot vanished, pulled from the project, erased from radio, and buried under unknown reasons. Curtis lost not only his life, but his voice, his legacy, and his message. There were no gunshots, no headlines that lasted, only the echo of a saxophone in the night, whispering like a final prayer. And for those who ever truly listened to King Curtis, they know that music, that silence, and that death were never just coincidence. Johnny Ace. Johnny Ace, the prince of love songs and the bullet without a name. In the early 1950s, no one sang love like Johnny Ace. To millions of young black women, his voice was honey, smooth, tender, and full of promise. Songs like Pledging My Love didn't just play on radios, they lived in hearts. He was the prince of love songs, the man whose voice could make even loneliness sound beautiful. But behind the velvet tone and tailored suits was a man worn thin. The endless touring, the constant pressure, the disputes with his band, and the suffocating contracts had left him exhausted and isolated. Then came Christmas Eve, 1954, Houston City Auditorium. After a sold-out show, Johnny went backstage, poured a few drinks, and laughed with friends. His girlfriend, Olivia Gibbs, sat beside him when he pulled a revolver from his pocket, half joking, half daring fate. "If the bullet doesn't go in, we'll live," he said. Seconds later, bang. A single shot. Johnny slumped over, blood spreading across the chair. The police arrived within minutes. The verdict: accidental self-inflicted gunshot. But not everyone believed it. Bandmate Curtis Tillman once said, "Johnny never played with guns. He hated them." The revolver, it turned out, wasn't even his. It belonged to his tour manager, a man Johnny had argued with days earlier over money. Another band member recalled seeing Johnny arguing heatedly backstage with a stranger who was never identified. For decades, Johnny's family insisted it wasn't an accident. One relative even received an anonymous letter that read only, "Silence will keep the rest of the family safe." Johnny Ace was just 25 when he died. In the days that followed, radio stations played Pledging My Love on repeat, a haunting farewell from a man whose music had defined romance itself. But the truth behind that fatal shot remains one of the darkest unsolved mysteries in early R&B history. Because when a voice like Johnny's vanishes in a flash of gunfire, it's not just an artist we lose, it's the innocence of an era. The melody ends, but the echo of mystery lingers on. Bobby Fuller. Bobby Fuller, the body in the car and the song that wouldn't die. Bobby Fuller was more than just another rising star. He was the sound of rebellion wrapped in a clean-cut smile. The man behind I Fought the Law had the kind of voice that could light up an American jukebox in 1966. Sharp suit, polished hair, and a guitar that screamed freedom. Bobby was every bit the golden boy of rock and R&B. But behind that spotless image burned a restless artist, desperate to break free from the strings his record label pulled. Then, one blistering July afternoon, everything ended. Bobby Fuller was found dead inside his car, parked just outside his Los Angeles apartment. His face was bruised, his shirt torn, his body scorched. The police called it suicide. The music world called it something else, a nightmare wrapped in silence. That morning, Bobby had missed his studio session. His best friend, Jim Reese, drove to check on him and spotted Bobby's blue Dodge sitting unlocked in the lot. The air reeked of gasoline. When he opened the door, Bobby was slumped over the steering wheel, mouth open, skin burned, an empty gas can beside him. But no lighter, no flame. Stranger still, all the papers had been removed from his wallet, as if someone had gone through his identity before erasing it. The autopsy listed asphyxiation as the cause of death, but the bruises on his wrists and face told another story, one of struggle and restraint. Still, no homicide investigation was ever opened. Whispers began spreading fast. Some said Bobby had planned to walk away from his label, even record an album exposing corruption in the industry. A week before his death, he'd receive an anonymous note that read, "You write songs. Don't write confessions." His family insisted he wasn't depressed. His fans refused to believe he'd ended his own life. At his funeral, thousands came to say goodbye, their grief turning into outrage. Radio stations pulled "I fought the law" out of respect, but the silence only deepened the wound. Rumor has it Bobby recorded a final demo, a truth that could have shaken the industry, but it vanished the day he did. Bobby Fuller didn't die because he lost hope. He may have died because he found the courage to speak. When an artist dies for telling the truth, the question isn't why they died, but who couldn't afford to let them live. Donny Hathaway, the voice that fell from the sky. Donny Hathaway wasn't just a singer. He was a soul that could make the air tremble. His voice had warmth, depth, and a divine tenderness that could make even silence weep. But behind that brilliance was a man quietly fighting his own mind, battling depression, paranoia, and haunting loneliness. On the cold night of January 13th, 1979, Donny fell from the 15th floor window of New York's Essex House Hotel. Police called it suicide, but those who loved him never believed it. Just hours before, he had been laughing with Roberta Flack, finishing a demo for their song, "You Are My Heaven." She said he looked happy, even hopeful about performing again. Yet soon after, his lifeless body was found on the glass roof below. No note, no message, only questions. What made the mystery darker was the hotel's design. Its windows couldn't open wide enough for someone to fall through by accident. A maid heard a loud crash just before the tragedy. When security entered, the radio was still playing softly, and on the desk lay a song manuscript with a chilling final line. "They want my voice, but not my truth." That paper vanished soon after. His manager insisted Donny wasn't suicidal. He was planning a tour, he said. Others remembered Donny's fear that someone was trying to destroy me from the inside. In a time when mental illness was dismissed or misunderstood, his words were labeled paranoia. But what if he was right? Today, fans still whisper his lyrics, "Someday we'll all be free." And they wonder, was Donny Hathaway trapped by his illness, or by a music industry that couldn't handle a black man whose brilliance was too deep, too pure, and too true? Donny wasn't just a voice, he was a song. And his death felt like someone silenced the music mid-melody, leaving the last note hanging in the dark. Junior Parker, the soul of the blues, and the surgery that too many still believe was no coincidence. Junior Parker was never a superstar splashed across magazine covers, but a true blues lover's, he was a treasure, a man whose voice smoldered like burning coals, smooth yet full of ache. When he sang, it felt as if you were sitting beside a winter fire, listening to a brother tell his life story, one of struggle, survival, and sorrow. But behind those stage lights lay a deep sadness. The industry barely noticed him. His songs were covered, commercialized, and celebrated, but rarely in his own name. In 1971, After weeks of severe headaches, Junior checked in a hospital for what doctors described as a simple brain operation. He told friends he wasn't feeling well, but it was nothing serious, just something under control. Yet, only days later, he was gone. Officially, it was post-operative complications. Unofficially, too many things didn't add up. The family wasn't allowed to see him for 48 hours after surgery. A nurse later told a local paper she had heard the lead surgeon shouting at someone in the operating room for using the wrong equipment. No one investigated. No one was blamed. When his family requested an independent review, it was quietly denied. And then something strange happened. In the months following his death, Junior's songs suddenly reappeared, re-recorded by white singers, charting higher than ever before. It felt like he had been erased to make space for others. There was no grand farewell, no televised tribute. But for those who had heard him sing, Junior Parker was more than a musician. He was a witness to a forgotten generation, a man who gave voice to pain and dignity in equal measure. His death left a silence the blues can still feel, and a question that will never fade. Did he die naturally, or was he silenced too soon? James Carr, the man who sang from the shadows. His voice wasn't just broken, it was bleeding. James Carr possessed the most aching voice in the history of soul music. When he sang The Dark End of the Street, time seemed to stop. The audience didn't just listen, they felt it. Because that song wasn't simply about forbidden love. It was the confession of a generation torn apart by race, poverty, and loneliness. But James Carr's own life was a tragedy wrapped in silence. For decades, he battled schizophrenia, drifting in and out of hospitals like a man caught between two worlds. Some days, he was calm and wise like a prophet. Others, he sat in the corner of a recording studio, tears streaming down his face for reasons no one could understand. In 2001, his heart finally gave out, or so they said. His death certificate listed heart failure, but no one saw him take his final breath. No one truly knew what happened. In his final weeks, he lived quietly with his niece in Memphis. She recalled him waking in the middle of the night, whispering, "They're listening to me." At first, she thought it was the illness talking. Then, the family noticed something odd. The small tape recorder in the house had vanished. Days later, James became agitated, claiming someone was tampering with his medication. When his pills were tested, the lithium levels were found to be 3 times higher than prescribed. The doctor refused to comment. On the morning of January 7th, James was found motionless in his bed. No injuries, no note, no one beside him. The police called it natural causes, but the story didn't end there. Just days after his death, a man appeared at the house claiming to be a copyright agent, demanding access to James's unreleased recordings. The family refused, but not long after, several of those songs mysteriously appeared under someone else's name. To this day, music historians whisper that James Carr had more unreleased tracks than anyone ever heard, songs that may have vanished with him. Maybe someone made sure they stayed buried. James Carr didn't die just from illness. He died in a world that never understood his pain. His voice was a cry for love in a time that gave him none, and his silence, in the end, became the saddest song of all. Jackie Wilson, the icon who had his lifeline pulled off the stage. Jackie Wilson wasn't just a performer. He was pure electricity in motion. They called him Mr. Excitement for a reason. With a single spin, a flash of his smile, or the smooth slide of his foot across the stage, he could send audiences into a frenzy. But behind that dazzling showmanship was a life riddled with betrayal, heartbreak, and pain. Few knew that Jackie had once been stabbed nearly to death over love, that he'd been drained of his fortune by greedy managers, or that he spent years trapped in an exploitative contract he could never escape. Then came that fateful night, September 29th, 1975. Jackie was performing Lonely Teardrops when tragedy struck. He collapsed mid-song, his body crumpling under the spotlight. What shocked the world wasn't just his fall, it was what followed. Jackie didn't die that night, but he might as well have. He spent the next 9 years in a coma, forgotten and penniless. The media claimed he suffered a heart attack, but witnesses recalled something strange. The sound engineer said Jackie had complained his water tasted unusually sweet before going on stage. That bottle was never tested. Even more disturbing, a doctor later confessed Jackie could have survived if only he'd been put on a ventilator sooner. Yet his care was delayed, inexplicably. Soon after, his medical records vanished into a private archive, locked away and accessible only to the insurance company's lawyers. His family couldn't afford proper care. Jackie Wilson, the man who once ruled the stage, spent his final years in a dim nursing home, curled up in silence. Only when heartbroken fans began writing letters did the press finally remember him. But by then, it was too late. In 1984, Jackie Wilson died, broke, forgotten, but never truly gone. His voice still soars, immortal, defying the silence that swallowed him. As one friend once said, he sang for the world, but died in silence. Jackie Wilson's story isn't just a tragedy, it's a warning. A reminder of how the entertainment industry can glorify its stars, then abandon them when the lights fade. He gave everything, his soul, his body, his spark, just to keep us entertained. And for that, he deserves to be remembered. If you've made it this far, it means you care not just about the music, but about the lives behind it. Because Jackie's death was only the beginning. The next 10 stories are even darker, some so shrouded in mystery, even their loved ones refuse to speak. Which of them do you think were victims of a conspiracy that's still buried in Hollywood shadows? Minnie Riperton. Minnie Riperton, the goddess of octaves and the tragedy of destiny. Minnie Riperton wasn't just a singer. She was a celestial force, a voice that could touch heaven itself. Known as the goddess of octave, she possessed a range so breathtaking that even the coldest hearts melted when she sang. Her timeless song, Loving You, wasn't just a melody. It was pure emotion, a whisper of love that felt eternal. But behind that angelic light was a shadow no one saw coming. At just 29, Minnie was diagnosed with breast cancer. Instead of rushing into treatment, she chose silence, or perhaps was forced into it. Some say it was her personal decision, but many insiders whisper that her record label feared the truth would damage her image, her sales, her brand. So, she smiled through the pain and sang through the fear. In her final days, she would often sit alone in the studio, journaling her thoughts and recording fragments of songs that spoke of fading time and forgotten dreams. One technician remembered her saying softly, "I'm not afraid of dying. I'm afraid of being forgotten, as if I never existed." When she was finally hospitalized, her condition was dire. Yet strangely, the hospital never released her full medical records. Even more haunting, her last recording, a song meant to be released after her death, was reportedly locked away by her label and has never been heard. Fans have long wondered, was Minnie silenced? Was her life sacrificed for the illusion of perfection? Her death became a painful reminder of how, in the ruthless world of fame, sometimes a voice is valued more than the soul behind it. And yet, Minnie Riperton's voice endures, a sound so divine it still melts frozen hearts, echoing through time as the eternal hymn of love, courage, and loss. David Ruffin, the soul of the Temptations and the tragic fall. David Ruffin wasn't just a member of the Temptations. He was the soul that gave their sound its heartbeat. That raspy, pleading voice in My Girl didn't just sing, it breathed life into an era. But behind the velvet voice was a storm that fame couldn't calm. David was bold, fiery, and defiant. He fought with managers, demanded his name on top of the marquee, and when the group refused, he was out. Still, he lived fast, loved recklessly, and spent money like tomorrow would never come. Then, in 1991, the unthinkable happened. David Ruffin was found lifeless on the doorstep of a Philadelphia hospital, unidentified, unclaimed, and alone. The official report said drug overdose. But those who knew him best refused to believe it ended that simply. Hours before his death, witnesses said David attended a private party filled with powerful music executives. He was tipsy, yes, but sharp enough to whisper, "I've got something that's going to shake them." No one ever found out what he meant. When his body was examined, there were bruises on his neck, 2 broken fingernails, and an empty wallet. Police called it coincidence. Friends called it cover-up. Former Temptations members believed he had been silenced, forced into an overdose to keep secrets buried. Even more chilling, his personal diary, one he had kept for years, mysteriously vanished after his death. David Ruffin lived loud, but he died quietly, too quietly for a man who helped define soul music. His story isn't just about fame and downfall. It's about how legends can disappear while their voices never fade. And if the truth about his final hours was buried, maybe it's up to the fans, the ones who still play My Girl with tears in their eyes, to dig it back up. Florence Ballard, the flower cut from fame too soon. Florence Ballard wasn't just a member of the Supremes. She was their soul. As a co-founder of Motown's greatest girl group, her voice carried the warmth, strength, and pain of a generation. But fame, as she learned, offers no protection against betrayal. After clashing with management and feeling pushed aside, Florence was forced out of the group she helped build. Contracts vanished. Friends disappeared. Depression and poverty replaced the spotlight. Some said she was unstable. Those who truly knew her said she was abandoned. No one in the music industry reached out a hand to save her. In 1976, at just 32, Florence died suddenly of a heart attack, but her death left haunting questions. Only a week before, she'd applied for public assistance. The caseworker remembered her as frail, but still glowing when she spoke about music. The day before she died, Florence told her sister she was writing her memoir. When the paramedics arrived after she collapsed in the bathroom, that manuscript, kept locked in a drawer, had vanished. Her family swore the apartment had been broken into days earlier. The media barely noticed. No investigation followed. Yet to this day, music lovers remember her not as a tragedy, but as a symbol, a woman of rare talent silenced by an industry that chose convenience over compassion. Florence Ballard didn't die from weakness. She died from neglect. And if we choose to remember her, let it be with empathy for all the voices the world turned away from. Tammy Terrell, the fallen angel behind the false glory. She was more than Marvin Gaye's duet partner. She was his heartbeat. Together, they gave the world timeless songs like Ain't No Mountain High Enough, turning love and longing into something eternal. Her voice carried hope. Her smile hid pain. Behind that radiant glow, Tammy was fighting a silent battle, a brain tumor that slowly stole her strength. She fainted on stage again and again, until one night she never got back up. She was only 24. Officially, they said it was illness. But whispers across Motown told another story. Friends and colleagues spoke of bruises, of fear, of a violent lover whose hands left marks not just on her skin, but on her destiny. A doctor later revealed that an earlier head injury might have worsened her condition. The same night, she collapsed in Marvin's arms for the final time. The stage lights still burned, the music still played, but Tammy never opened her eyes again. Even more haunting, several of her personal diaries, filled with confessions and emotional torment, vanished without explanation. After her death, Marvin Gaye was never the same. He once admitted, "I think she was murdered, not by one man, but by a system that made her live a lie." That quote quietly disappeared from many biographies. Tammy Terrell's life ended too soon, but her voice, pure, aching, and eternal, still echoes through every soul that has loved deeply, lost tragically, and learned that sometimes love just isn't enough to save someone. Sam Cooke, the voice that was silenced, and the truth that stayed buried. Sam Cooke wasn't just the king of soul. He was the heartbeat of a generation. The man behind "A Change Is Gonna Come" gave voice to an entire movement, turning pain into poetry and struggle into sound. But behind the velvet tone and perfect smile was a rebel. The first black artist to own his music, his contracts, and his future. That kind of freedom made him dangerous to the wrong people. On a December night in 1964, Sam Cooke was shot dead in a Los Angeles motel. The police called it self-defense, but the story never made sense. That night, He was seen with a mysterious woman who vanished, along with his wallet, clothes, and dignity. Moments later, Sam, wearing only a coat, burst into the motel office, shouting for help. Bertha Franklin, the manager, claimed he attacked her, and that she had no choice but to shoot. But witnesses described something darker. Bruises on his face, scratches on his arms, bullet wounds that told of a struggle, not an assault. His family believed he was beaten before he was killed. And the woman? Never questioned, never found. Friends say Sam had been planning to expose corruption in the music industry. Contracts, royalties, and the white executives who profited off black talent. He was ready to take control, one relative said, and they couldn't let that happen. Sam Cooke's death was ruled an accident, but to many, it was an execution. The world lost not just a singer, but a symbol of independence, pride, and power. His voice promised change. His silence reminds us how dangerous truth can be. Otis Redding, the voice that fell from the sky. Otis Redding wasn't just a singer. He was the heartbeat of Southern soul, the man who turned pain into poetry and longing into light. Every note he sang carried the weight of love, struggle, and hope for a generation that believed music could heal what the world broke. But behind that calm smile was a man fighting silent wars against racism, against the industry that tried to box him in, and against the feeling that true freedom always came with a price. In December 1967, just as he was about to conquer the world, his plane went down over a frozen Wisconsin lake. The weather was clear. The aircraft was sound. The pilot was experienced. Yet something went terribly wrong. The radio went silent minutes before impact, and no one could explain why. His final recording, a haunting track said to hint at a storm in the system, was mysteriously shelved. To this day, fans still whisper the question that refuses to die. Was it fate, or was something far more deliberate? Did Otis Redding simply fall from the sky, or was he silenced for flying too close to the truth? Marvin Gaye, the son slain by his father's trembling hand. Marvin wasn't just a singer. He was the heartbeat of love, lust, and quiet rebellion. His voice could make you feel everything, from desire to despair. But behind that smooth tone was a storm few ever saw. As a child, Marvin was beaten by a father obsessed with religion and tormented by his own demons. That pain followed him, shaping every note he sang. In April 1984, during a violent argument inside their Los Angeles home, Marvin's father pulled the trigger, firing a bullet from the very gun Marvin had once gifted him. In the days leading up to it, Marvin told friends, "I feel like someone's pushing me toward destruction." His assistant revealed he had planned to move out, start over. But the night before his death, he called in tears and said, "I won't live to see my 45th birthday." The police called it a domestic tragedy, but fans and friends believed something deeper was at play, an invisible weight that had been crushing him for years. In the end, Marvin Gaye didn't just die from a bullet. He was undone by the burden of a soul too heavy for this world to understand. Michael Jackson, the king and the last pill. Michael Jackson wasn't just the king of pop. He was a cultural revolution. The first black superstar to truly shatter the walls of white-dominated entertainment. He didn't just perform. He transformed music, dance, and fame itself. But the higher he climbed, the lonelier his world became. Behind the dazzling lights and billion-dollar empire lay a man consumed by pressure, pain, and paranoia. In 2009, the world stopped. Michael was found lifeless in his mansion after his doctor administered a powerful dose of propofol, a drug meant only for hospital use. Officially, it was ruled a medical accident. Yet for millions, it felt like something far darker. His assistant once recalled Michael whispering, "If anything happens to me, don't trust anyone around me." Those words now echo like a prophecy. He was days away from his grand comeback. The This Is It tour, a return that many believe could have reshaped his legacy and threatened those profiting from his fame. His death wasn't just the end of a life. It was the silencing of a voice that had touched every corner of the world. To this day, fans still ask, was it fate or something planned from the start? Whitney Houston, The angel who drowned in the spotlight. She had a voice that felt heaven-sent, yet lived a life trapped in quiet torment. Behind the perfection the world demanded, the flawless image of a black woman who had to be strong, pure, and untouchable, Whitney was forced to bury her truth, her love, her pain, her real self. On February 11th, 2012, she was found lifeless in a bathtub at the Beverly Hilton Hotel. The official story said she slipped after taking drugs. But those who truly knew her believed otherwise. She was clean, preparing for a triumphant return to the stage. One close friend recalled her final words, "I saw the lights, but I didn't see myself in them." Her autopsy revealed a blow to the head before her death, yet no one was ever questioned. Whitney's light was extinguished just as it was about to shine again. She didn't die from addiction. She died from the unbearable weight of hiding who she was in a world that only wanted her voice, not her truth. These artists gave us more than hits. They gave us their hearts, their suffering, and their silence. They died misunderstood, but the music still whispers their pain. We can't rewrite their stories, but we can honor them with love, empathy, and remembrance. Every like, every share is a small way to let their voices rise again. Thank you for not letting their names fade away. Comment below which artist's memory still haunts you the most. Let their souls live on through our words and through the music that never truly dies.